The treat of sleeping in your dead son's bed will never be as sweet. This is Tokyo Story. Hello.
Welcome to Seen and Heard. This is the podcast where we talk about the Sight and Sound Top 100 list. We're going in kind of a ping-pong fashion, so we start at the top of the list, we go to the bottom of the list, the next one's back from the top, and we kind of work our way towards the center.
Mm-hmm.
This week just happens to be Yasujirō Ozu's Tokyo Story.
Wow.
This is a seminal one. It's a big one. I feel like we say that every time because they are.
Well, if we're going every time we're going to be at the top of the list, it is going to be a seminal one.
Even the bottom, yeah.
So last week we did Imitation of Life,
which we are both kind of
we were both
in the middle.
Agreed that shouldn't be on the list.
No. So before we get into this week's movie, Jackie, what have you been watching?
Well, Greg, I was lucky enough this past Thanksgiving weekend to see Licorice Pizza.
Wow. What?
I have a feeling you went as well.
Yes, I did. I saw it for a second time.
Incredible. And we're in LA, so we're lucky to be in the presence of the only theater playing it on the West Coast.
Yep, there's 4 theaters total. 3 of them are in New York. 1 is in LA. That's it.
Fucking New York.
I know. Why do they get 3?
I know, that's crazy.
Come on. How about 2 and 2?
Yeah.
I think it
all
came
in
down
the
to
city?
I think so, yeah. I think it came down to theaters that were able to project 70 millimeter. So I think that was what he wanted to do. Anyway, it wasn't shot in 70, but sure.
I mean, it looked great.
Mm-hmm.
It was great. No, I really loved it. It was such a great experience. I felt like I was really... The fact that it was only playing there, I felt like I was actually like a part of something.
I know, right?
The fact that I expected to like see people I knew, you know, like because it's the only place playing it. I think you said Paul was at your screening. You went at night. I went during the day.
Yeah, we went the same day. I went to the 7:15. Paul and Maya were there and their kids, and one of the little girls from the movie.
Their kids are in the movie.
Their kids are in the movie. One of the girls, it's like that. Without giving anything away, the main character, whose name in the movie I'm totally blanking on, but Cooper Hoffman,
Gary
Valentine, he briefly like has this crush on this other girl that's like his own age.
Yeah, that's
she
their
was
kid?
there. No, it's not their kid, but she was there.
Oh, okay.
And I think Mark Ruffalo was also there, even though he's not in the movie.
No, but I loved that about it so much. It really felt like a family. Like it felt like it was obviously Philip Seymour Hoffman's son, and then it was Alana Haim and all her sisters and her parents, and I didn't know that they were all in it, and it was such a nice surprise. Like it was really very sweet. And then Paul Thomas Anderson and Maya Rudolph's kids were in it. Like it just felt very much like this like inherited movie, you know, this movie that's like it felt like a family. It felt like a filmmaking family, and it was very sweet.
Yeah. What did you think of, well, I guess we shouldn't go into specifics about the movie.
Let me just say, I didn't know that I was going to relate to it as much as I did. Like, I knew that Alana was older than Gary. I didn't know she was 25. I didn't know, well, I knew it's in Los Angeles, but I didn't know that we were going to see her home life so much. She's a 25-year-old from LA, the Valley, me, in this like quarter life crisis. Like it really did resonate with me a lot. Like Alana's character resonated with me a lot, and it was a very nice surprise. Like I didn't really expect that, because like I really like Paul Thomas Anderson, but I'm not the type to like, I'm not like you.
You're not gonna fall on a sword for him.
No, I'm not gonna fall on the sword for him, because I never really connected with any of his characters as much as I did this time.
Yeah.
So I really loved it.
And I see that, honestly, a lot of his characters are these white male characters. Yeah. No, it's true. It's true. I think, so you liked, first of all, wasn't she great in it?
Incredible.
Oh my God.
And her sisters. They were hilarious.
They're so good. Yeah, I love the movie. It's one of those movies that's even better on a rewatch.
I'm really excited to rewatch it.
I'm gonna go see it a third time.
You are not.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Well, here's the thing.
When it comes out?
No, before like next weekend or something. Because I have friends that want to see it.
Let other people see it. You're so mean.
It's I don't know. I also don't want to overdo it because once upon a time in Hollywood, there was a moment where I was like, I've seen this movie like 10 times in the last year. Like, I need to calm down because I'm going to get sick of it. So I had to take like a year off.
Okay.
I actually just saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood this last weekend at the New Beverly.
I saw your letterbox.
It's a tradition now. It's like I go with my friends. We go to either El Coyote or Casa Vega.
Wow.
Rounds of margaritas. If it's at El Coyote, I get the enchiladas Howard, which is the best thing on the menu.
I've been to El Coyote with you, actually.
That's right, yeah. We went.
So funny.
And then you just walk across the street to the theater and you go see Once Upon a Time. And
is it still there? I'd love to see it there.
He plays it like every couple months. It'll have like a couple show times.
And I just missed it. It's done.
Yeah, you just missed it. But it's like his personal print, and he shows like period specific trailers and stuff beforehand, like the trailer for Rosemary's Baby is one of them that he shows. But yeah, it's just like a fun thing. There's props from the movie, and they have his like the Rick Dalton, the Leo fake posters like around the lobby and stuff. Yeah.
Tokyo Story was released in Japan in 1953. However, it was labeled too Japanese for a wider release, and there were screenings here and there in England and the United States, but I think it really had its main release in New York in the 70s, to be specific, 72. That's what I found, but Greg, you're saying you found something else.
I saw that it had screenings in the late 50s and early 60s, but yeah, it might have not have gotten like a wide release until... It's interesting, 72. That's the year of The Godfather.
It is also the year that Paul Schrader released his book on Transcendentalism. Which is why it kind of worked. We'll get into that.
Yeah.
But the director of this film is Yasujirō Ozu, and it was written by Ozu and his longtime frequent collaborator, Kogo Noda. Not to be confused with Kogonada. The video essayist
and filmmaker. Did you see his movie Columbus?
I didn't, but I've heard such good things.
I didn't like it.
You didn't like it? Was it like an Ozu movie?
Yeah, I see the influence, but no, it didn't do it for me.
Okay, so Tokyo Story tells the story of an elderly couple, the Hirayamas, who travel from Onomichi in western Japan to Tokyo to visit their adult children. Once there, everyone except their widowed daughter-in-law, Noriko, seems too busy to entertain them, often unwittingly making them feel like a burden. The children even send them to a spa for a few days to not have to deal with them. Once they return to Onomichi, Tomi, the mother, becomes ill and passes away shortly after the children come. After that, Mr. Hirayama gives Noriko, the only one who stuck around after the funeral, his wife's watch as a sign of their love and appreciation of her kindness. The film stars Chishu Ryu as Shukichi, the father of the Hirayama family, Cheiko Higashiyama as Tomi, the mother, and Setsuko Hara as Noriko. The film is part of a loose trilogy of films called the Noriko trilogy, because all of these films tell the story of a woman named Noriko, not the same woman, but played by the same actress, Setsuko Hara. And she plays a woman named Noriko in all of these movies, and they're about family dynamics. Generally, they're about like her character not wanting to get married, but her family wanting her to get married. They're about like father-daughter relationships. And the films are late spring, which is the first one, early summer, and this film, Tokyo Story.
Well, it's interesting. This movie is also... So Ozu is one of the three sort of great Japanese masters of cinema. You had him, I think he was the earliest. Then you had Kenji Mizoguchi? Yeah, Mizoguchi was, I think, just started just after the silent era, because Ozu started in the 20s with silent films. And then, of course, we have Kurosawa. So it's sort of the three, and it's funny because they're all so different. Like Kurosawa is like the Western audience, like the samurai movies, which were Westerns, and came over here in the 50s and were big. And Mizoguchi's a little more Japanese, and then Ozu is over there like very Japanese movies. Just very, I can imagine an audience in the 50s was not quite ready for this.
I can't even imagine an audience in the 50s watching this movie.
You mean a Western audience?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Hirayamas have two sons, Keizo, the youngest, who lives in Osaka, and Koichi, who is a doctor in Tokyo. They have 2 daughters. Seije is how I think we say her name. Apologies to all Japanese-speaking audiences just right now. I'm probably murdering these names, and I'm so sorry. Shige, who is a hairdresser, and their youngest, Kyoko, who is a school teacher, and she still lives with them at home. Their middle son died during World War II, but they remain close to his widow, Noriko.
So much so that you even kind of, when you meet her, you think she's one of the daughters.
I had, and this is kind of getting into initial thoughts.
Yeah, why don't you tell me what you thought of the movie?
What did I think of the movie?
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to have initial thoughts about this movie. I sat down to write down my initial thoughts and I drew a blank. Because, okay, here are my initial thoughts. Like, as I was watching it, and this is going in chronological order.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know who was related to who. I didn't know who was the son, who was the daughter, who was the daughter-in-law. Because they were all just saying mother, or at least that's what the subtitle said. So that was one of my initial thoughts. Another initial thought, I have seen Late Spring, the first of the Noriko movies. And I noticed it in that one, really. I feel like it would be smarter to talk about my initial thoughts of that movie than this, because I feel like with Ozu, it's just a lot of the same.
It's like the first one you see
is the one that
Late Spring is on the list.
It is. So I think I was just taken, like anyone would be who is not from Japanese culture, of the kind of lack of affection, like in the family. That was honestly one of my initial thoughts. I was like, wait, are they actually that's why I thought maybe that's the brother-in-law, maybe that's the daughter-in-law. That's why they're not like hugging. And so that was like one of my initial thoughts. But even before that, I mean, the opening of this movie is beautiful. I love it. I love the opening of this. I love the opening of Late Spring. Just these static images of life.
Oh.
The schoolboys who return again at the end. And I think in the opening, a lot of the images we see in the opening, the sounds we hear in the opening of the boat, they return again at the end.
Mm-hmm. And
it's beautiful. Oh, another thing I will say, though, initial thoughts, like when I realized that this movie's 2 hours and 17 minutes, I thought, okay, this is gonna take a long time because it's Ozu and it's very slow. But it didn't. Yeah. It flew by. It really flew by for me.
I agree.
What about you? What are your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I saw this probably 5 or 6 years ago. Like you, the first one I saw was Late Spring. And you know, it's funny, when I saw it, I saw Late Spring before I moved to LA. I probably saw Late Spring for the first time like 10 years ago and actually did not like it.
Yeah.
So I was young. And but this is such a big movie that I always felt like, okay, well, I got to do Tokyo Story. Like, maybe Ozu's not for me, but I got to do Tokyo Story. So I saw this 5 or 6 years ago and was blown away. Like, absolutely loved it. Have since seen a handful of his other movies, maybe not as many as I should at this point. But yeah, this is up there. It's kind of recognized as like his masterpiece. And for good reason. It's a great movie, but I think he has other movies that are like I love An Autumn Afternoon, which he did about 10 years after this. In fact, I think that was either his last movie or one of his last couple, but so good. But yeah, he essentially was making the same movie his whole career. And it sounds stupid on paper. Like, who cares about that? Like,
who cares about Noriko?
But it works.
No, it does.
Each movie somehow sort of has its own identity. So yeah, I love Tokyo Story. The first time I saw it, I was blown away. When I rewatched it yesterday, I was just as blown away. And one thing that really stuck with me was the way that it kind of starts. I mean, it starts beautifully with those just kind of living, breathing shots of their town and stuff. But it sneaks up on you, right? Because they're coming to visit, and it's a lot of like, oh, you take them, I'll take them, oh, send them to you. And then before you know it, you're so involved in this, in these characters and their lives and stuff, and it catches up to you at a certain point. God, I care so much.
That's what I meant when I said it went by so quick for me. Yeah. Like, it really did. Because that's the whole thing. Like, it's buried inside these everyday moments, these seemingly mundane things. Like, that's what the story is, that it's buried in it.
Yeah.
But not too deep. Like, it's not something you have to go digging for, or at least I think.
Yeah.
Your face is telling me otherwise.
No. I mean, this is a very simple movie in a lot of ways. I think, unlike a lot of other, like, I'm putting this in quotation, homework movies, it's one of the more straightforward kind of like...
I think so.
Yeah, like you can see Tokyo Story once and kind of get what there is to get. Like, not to say that it's all surface and not to say that it doesn't reward other visits, but it's unlike some of the other movies on this list. Like, you can see what it's doing. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
So I pulled up a little bit about like transcendentalism because that's a big, Ozu is like a big figure in this theory of film. And I didn't know much about it until today, to be quite honest. Like, I knew who Paul Schrader was, obviously, and I know that he's like a theorist and he's a critic and he's a director and he wrote Taxi Driver. But I really got into it today because it felt like I really went down a rabbit hole. Like, I learned about it and then I was like, oh, cool, this video of him explaining. Oh, cool, like, look at this. And I thought it was really fascinating. So Paul Schrader, as I said, he is a critic and a director and a screenwriter. He wrote a book in 1972, I think. And now I'm looking at my notes. I don't have the name of the book. I think it's just called Transcendentalism in Film Style.
That sounds right.
And it came out in 1972 and it coincided with this release in New York. And that's when a lot of critics saw Tokyo Story and fell in love with it. And essentially, he defines transcendentalism as a common film style used by various filmmakers in divergent cultures to express the transcendent. Quite a mouthful. But if you think about it, all he's saying is this is how they express this kind of, and he defines it as this, striving towards the ineffable, the invisible. Like, they're looking for something that's beyond the realm of like physical human life.
Right.
And it's Ozu, in his book, it's Ozu, Bresson, and Dreyer.
I love that.
Yeah, I really want to read the book now.
Yeah, that's kind of one of those like seminal film textbooks. I've never read it either.
I've never read it. This is what happens when you don't go to film school. So basically there's this great video of him talking about it. And he talks about like a bunch of things like dead time and how we are instructed to look at nothing. Like, it's everything is intentional. He says it's using the power of cinema itself against itself to get you into a sense that you have to participate. And I think it's so, like, that's so complex on so many levels. Like, it's like, and it gets into the whole idea about like what film is and what it can be and what it should be.
Absolutely.
But it's so deep and it's so true. Like, why are we looking at this? Why are we watching? Like, a big example in that one was like Jeanne Dillman and like watching her make a casserole for
the
like
extreme version.
Yeah.
Or Tarkovsky,
Yeah, and it's so human, it's so deep, but this movie is not that complicated. Like, it's nuanced, it's deep, but it's just not in like a tricky way. Right, because it wants you to see the mundane. It wants you to see like ordinary life. So this is the order it goes in. These are how transcendentalist movies work. So essentially, first, you have to convey the everyday, which is what we get in this movie, a lot of it. And then you have to create disparity. And this is like this was described as like one tear in the mundane. And I'd say it happens like when the mom comes to stay with Noriko and she starts talking and then we see Noriko like cry in bed. There's one tear that comes down her face. And that's the first like tear really in the whole facade, in her whole smiley facade. And then after that disparity, there's something that he calls a decisive action, which is like the rupture. Like, basically he said like, okay, you're being instructed to be bored, like to look at this. And then there's a rupture. There's like an explosion that you were not prepared for. And that's what moves you to the transcendent.
Right.
Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like in Bresson, it's music. There's always this burst of music. Like, you're watching this movie that's really ineffective, like and I'm using effective like AFFEC. You're watching it for so long, and then there's like Mozart, and you just cry. Like, that's what happens to me. So basically, like, the burst of tears, Noriko's bursting of tears, that's the decisive action after this disruption. And then after that, you get stasis, which is like quiet again, which is what we return to the images we started with in the movie. The town, the boat, that beautiful moment when Kyoko is teaching school. It's a quiet classroom. She looks out the window. She sees Noriko's train passing. That moment is what gets me. That's the moment for me. That's the rapture for me.
Oh, I love that.
And then like the kind of traits of this kind of filmmaking are like heightened sound effects, for example, which we get a lot with the boat. We get that a lot in Bresson movies, like the steps in Pit Pocket. Everyone's steps are crazy. Minimal composed score, minimal dialogue, slowless static frames, use of non-actors, wide angles. They're all part of this like movement.
Mm-hmm. I guess Ozu was one of the first sort of, I don't want to say hypnotic, but there's a whole thing that kind of evolved. He's kind of ground zero. I'm kind of pulling this out of a hat here. I could be wrong, but I feel like he's kind of ground zero for the whole slow cinema sort of wave. Like, obviously climaxed years later with Tarkovsky and with Bellatar and people like that. And Chantal Akerman. But yeah, this is kind of the seed. It's not necessarily in Tokyo Story specifically, but yeah, I mean, this Bergman kind of planted that seed too. But just exactly the kind of the forcing you out of your daily rhythm. It's just putting you on this other wavelength, forcing you almost like against your will. The audience is against their will to just be in the moment of this. And sometimes you're not going to be looking at anything. You'll be looking at an alley and you're waiting 10 seconds for the characters to enter.
Right.
But it's all part of breaking you down. I'm a big believer in that. Break them down. Like in the way that John Dielman does. Hurt them, want them so they're begging to leave, and then they'll have this kind of like epiphany.
That's what he says. He says like that usually movies are leaning towards you. These movies lean away from you, so you lean in.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. I've always there's something about Ozu's storytelling that is really special, and I do think maybe this is a good segue into the sort of technical merits. But Ozu, nobody used a 4:3 frame like Ozu ever.
Yeah,
ever. Like his framing in this movie, but also like his movies later in the 50s and 60s, like Floating Weeds and Autumn Afternoon, are so beautifully shot, and they're these simple frames. He doesn't move the camera. Kind of the inventor of this, what's known now as the tatami shot, which is
them sitting on
tatami mats, but because the camera is always people are sitting on the floor and the camera is down on the floor with them.
Yeah,
you're not looking down at them. It's simple. There's simple shots on the floor, and so much is conveyed. He doesn't move the fucking camera, and there's so many beautifully composed frames in this movie. I mean, in so many of his movies, but in this movie too. It takes my breath away because he has such a photographic eye. Like you could hang, and I know people like to say this about so many. You could pause it and hang that on any moment in this movie and hang it on the wall. It's never been more true than with Ozu. You could hang any frame of this movie on a wall.
Now I know what I'm getting you for Christmas. I'm gonna pause at a random time, print it out, put it in a frame.
And his shots are always there's so much depth to them. Like you see so much in the frame. It's these sort of deceptively simple frames, and they just like do so much. They do so much in the way that he frames the family, in the way that he frames just boats passing by or smoke coming out of smokestacks. Like it's just so he's on another level. No one,
you guys, Greg is shaking right now.
Ever use the 4:3 frame. Because, look, like as soon as widescreen came around in the 50s, CinemaScope and stuff, people, that was like, oh, those movies look beautiful, 2001, and these super wide images, and those are beautiful. They can be very beautiful. But the 4:3 frame, or Academy ratio, as it's sometimes referred to, is often like, it's sort of coming back now. Wes Anderson brings it back, and some like A24 movies are like shooting in 4:3. But Ozu this is where it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know where that came from.
My goodness. Yeah. And can I just say, like, there's no like reverse shot the way that we're like used to it.
Yes.
It's literally just like they look like POVs of like the character talking right at you.
Yes. that gets
and it's so like at first it was a little weird for me personally, but I very quickly got used to it and I very quickly enjoyed it. I mean, like,
it immerses you more into the movie. And
definitely
Jonathan Demme was big on that. If you look at Silence of the Lambs or he kind of took that. I mean, like, there's so much to take, but it does work so well.
It is, I actually really like it now. But at first I was kind of like, oh wow, okay, they're gonna be looking at me while they're saying their lines.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, and the use of sound. I mean, there's not much music, and when music is used, it's heartbreaking.
It's
I feel like he pulls it out at the right time.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of, just kind of the sounds. Like, if you take a look at when they're in Tokyo and you hear construction and cars and stuff, and then their house in the country, it's like insects and stuff. So this is a remake of the Leo McCarey movie, Hollywood melodrama, Make Way for Tomorrow, from the 30s, just after the Depression. And it's funny because that's kind of I also revisited that this week. I hadn't seen that in a long time. And it's funny. They're very different movies. Have you seen Make Way for Tomorrow?
I haven't.
So on the surface, they're kind of about the same thing. They're about two older couples, in each movie, about getting older and their family kind of pushing them by the wayside. Make Way for Tomorrow, though, is, even though it's a very classy movie, like, it's a melodrama, but it's handled very well. That's a much sadder movie because the parents lose their house in the beginning. And the kids are like, oh, okay, well, I don't want to take both of them. So why don't you take one parent? I'll take the other. So they get split up.
No.
And you have all the they're calling each other long distance, like, oh, I miss you and stuff. And it's in that way, it's kind of more tragic. Whereas at least in Tokyo Story,
definitely more tragic.
They get to stay together until they're not.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think. But that's the thing. I think that's the point of this, like, film style is, yes, you're not going to get that. You're not going to get action. You're not going to get melodrama. You're not going to get tears until you do.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah. You got to earn it.
You have to earn it. I also found that Ozu was very influenced by Zen Buddhism growing up. And I mean, the whole concept of Zen, and this I found from, like, Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, it's like enlightenment through sitting meditation, which is just
His
the
movies.
movie. Yeah, that's literally the movie.
Yeah.
You have to sit here, and at the end, you're going to feel something that you didn't know that you were going to feel based on how the movie was going. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and you do. Well, he was an interesting person. I think he died at age 60. I think it was in 1963, and he lived with his mom his whole life.
Really?
Lived with his mom, always single.
Not married?
I think he was closeted, actually,
Was
because he
he?
got thrown out of school for writing a love letter to, like, this good-looking boy. But yeah, it had an interesting life in the sense that, like, he kind of tried to do a couple things that never really materialized. Eventually became, like, a substitute teacher. Then he was, like, in the war, like, and had war experience and stuff, and just kind of came out, moved to Tokyo, and started in the camera department. And after a while, he was making his own movies in the silent era. But yeah, he's an interesting figure, and he was an alcoholic too, which plays a part in this movie with the father.
It does.
But yeah, an interesting character himself.
Yeah, and I think even, like, these ideas of, like, enlightenment and kind of mundaneness. I mean, it's in the fabric of the film, and it's also in the story itself. Like, Noriko has that great speech, like, right before she breaks down, where she basically says, like, nothing happens to me. Like, I feel this way. I feel lonely. Days pass. Night comes. What else does she say? She says, my heart seems to be waiting for something.
Right.
And it's like, that's also kind of like the movie. It's waiting. It's sitting. It's waiting for that spiritual something to hit you.
It's a beautiful thing.
Are you crying?
Yeah. Did this get you? This got you, right? At the end.
It got me, but it got me more today when I was watching the ending. I watched the last, like, 15 minutes again today. And like I said, when Kyoko watches her leave on the train, that's what got me.
Oh my God.
That really got me.
Yeah.
But Late Spring, the ending of Late Spring, spoiler alert, where he's peeling the apple, that made me like sob.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I cried more. I'll admit it. I cried more during Late Spring. Is it late spring? Early spring?
Late
no?
spring.
Okay.
Late spring, yeah.
Maybe we should talk about like the movie itself. We've been talking very philosophical.
I guess so. I mean,
it's kind of relatable, as sad and like harsh as that sounds. I mean, like, I love my grandparents. I absolutely love my grandparents. I'm blessed that I have 3 of my grandparents with me. But I mean, I couldn't help but watching this and like feeling guilty and like seeing myself. Like, there's this one part where he goes, "Oh, you know, like there's that baseball game. I'm gonna go." Like, I don't know. I did. I felt guilty. I felt kind of like.
Do you think
felt?
Do you think
shitty.
It's one of the intentions of the movie?
Yeah, for sure. And it's so like subtle too. Like when the eldest sister, the eldest daughter, who's the hairdresser, is talking to her husband. She says some wild stuff. She says, like, you needn't bother taking them out. Like, why'd you get them those expensive cakes? Like, crackers.
Oh, yeah,
fine.
I know.
Like, things like that. And it's so subtle, but it's there. And it's like...
Don't spend too much money on them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really heartbreaking. But
well,
like I said, it did kind of scare me. It made me feel, like, kind of guilty.
Yeah. I mean...
Not that I've ever done that. I've never given my grandparents crackers. Like,
saltines.
If I'm going to go visit my grandparents, like, I take them pastry.
From Porto's?
Depends. But and then when, oh my gosh, that same hairdresser, the hairdresser daughter, when they come back from this, the fact that they send them to that hot spring
Tommy
to get rid of them for a few days, like they came to see you, idiots. Like, that really...
She's the worst of the children. I think we can say that right now.
And then they're so oblivious to it. Like, the doctor's wife is asking him, "Oh, do you think, like, your parents were satisfied?" And he goes, "Why wouldn't they be? They saw so many things and they got to go to the hot spring." It's like, how dumb could you be?
The parents take it in with such grace, too. Like,
such grace, because they don't want to be burdens.
Of course. Yeah,
like...
Yeah. Like, you guys showed us so much. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Yeah.
The mom in the beginning tells the daughter-in-law, the doctor's wife, she says, like, "Hope we're not inconveniencing you." And she just kind of nods. She doesn't say, like, "No, you're not." And then there's Noriko, who is like
so
an angel from heaven. Yeah. So happy to have them. So kind. One of my favorite moments in the movie, it's when they're at Noriko's house. And she's made them dinner with the little... Not made them dinner, I'm sorry. She borrowed sake from a neighbor and she's taking care of them. She's fanning them, okay? She's fanning them. And then we cut to the 2 siblings who are fanning themselves and deciding to send them to the hot spring. That's like one of my favorite moments of the movie.
Yeah.
It's like purely storytelling through images. Like...
Absolutely.
It is.
It's a movie.
It's great.
Yeah. Oh, it's funny. Would you say that this is kind of, in a way, it's kind of Noriko's story?
Yeah, for sure.
You know,
it's the Noriko trilogy.
It's the Noriko trilogy. She's, you know, she's just great. Like, her character is seemingly kind of one-dimensional, but as the movie goes on, you some of the layers get peeled back, and, you know, you think she's just this kind of like selfless, caring person. Her husband has been dead. Their son, her husband, has been dead at this point for 8 years, I think.
Yeah.
And they're encouraging her. They're like, "Get married, please. Like, don't."
Yeah.
And she's just kind of all smiles the whole time.
She smiles the whole
until the
time.
end.
Until she doesn't. Yes.
Until she doesn't. But yeah, and the way after the Tomi dies, the mother, and she's with the father, and everyone else has left his house in the country, and they have that conversation, and he's just praising her for being there by her side and just being such a great, genuine person. And she's very I think this is also kind of a Japanese thing, but it's like rejecting the praise and like, she's very embarrassed. I'm a selfish person, and like, you just don't know, and like, it just adds a whole nother layer to her.
Yeah, definitely. And there's even like hidden layers with other stuff. Like, for example, like they even say one time, like, oh, our son caused you so much trouble. Like, why? Why did he cause her trouble? Because he like went out drinking a few times. Was his alcoholism like really bad? And then they even say about the dad. When he starts drinking again, the eldest daughter says something.
Treats him like crap.
And she says something like, you gave us such a hard time. And then at the end, he says, you know, if I knew it was going to be like this about his wife, I would have been nicer to her. He said like something like that. And it makes you start to think like, what's the story there? Like what?
Yeah.
How bad was he? Because he seems pretty nice in his old age.
Nice, yeah.
But yeah, it's hidden layers. It's things that, and that's the whole movie. It's like, here's the mundane, here's what you see, and then we're going to peel that away slowly and show you the truth.
Yeah.
But it's not an overwhelming truth. It's not this secret that's
epiphany.
revealed. It's not. It's
no. Well, it's like in the way that they're very grateful to their children early on and stuff, and then later when he goes out drinking with his two old buddies, and the guy, one of his friends is talking about how he doesn't like his son, and then he comes out and says like, yeah, my son's just a neighborhood doctor. Like I thought he was doing better, but he's just this neighborhood doctor. Yeah. So it comes out.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, like you said, no epiphanies. It's just this like these truths are kind of peeled back as the movie goes on.
But why don't we talk about Noriko's breakdown? Because it's kind of like
at the end.
Yeah. I mean, how many are there? There's only one.
About 5. Don't you remember that scene where she's standing on the cliff about to throw herself off?
What?
Yeah.
No, it's such a like, she's grateful and she's sad and I think she's kind of disappointed in the other siblings as well, but then she gives that great speech
about not blaming them.
Yeah. And it's, I don't know, she's just overcome with emotion.
Yeah. I love her.
I love her too.
She's the midge of this movie.
Yeah. She's so the midge of this movie. Oh my gosh. One of the big themes of Tokyo Story and a lot of Ozu's work is the generational differences, obviously. And I like how it doesn't really judge too much. Like, I feel like he just presents the kids as they are, like, and again, her speech at the end where she says she doesn't blame them. I don't know. Do you think that he's villainizing the kids at all?
It's hard to say. It's really hard to say. I think as great a movie as Make Way for Tomorrow is, I think Make Way for Tomorrow villainizes the kids a little bit more. I think Ozu is a little subtler about it. And coming from someone who did live with his mother his whole life, basically, I think she passed away just a couple years before he did. I don't know. I don't know that he is to an extent, right?
Of course, but I don't think it's excessive, and I don't think it's anything that's not. No. It's nothing exaggerated.
Yeah.
Well,
because some of them, for example, the son that's a doctor, he really does have stuff to attend to. And the daughter, even though she's a little ridiculous, does have a beauty parlor, and she does have to work. So it's not like...
And their son is young, the son that's still alive. Like, he's pretty young, and he's just starting out. And
it's not that they're selfish.
But then why would we have a character like Noriko if they weren't?
You see, there's a lot of layers to that because they are all making a living to impress their parents, to live up to their parents' standards, which is clearly not enough.
Right.
None of them. Because if the doctor is not enough, then surely the woman that owns the beauty parlor is absolutely not.
She's a business owner, though.
He's kicking him while he's drunk. Can I just say, I felt so bad for him and his friends when they came home and just want to take a nap because they're totally wasted, and she's like kicking them and hitting him with his hat and like what? Tell me. It's like, oh, just let him sleep. You're not going to get anything out of him right now.
That is pretty funny. But I like the way that he shows when they go to the hot spring, right? And it's mostly young people and they're having a great time. And he takes a minute to really show that.
Well, see, there's again, talking about the visual storytelling of the movie. There's a great shot. Again, it's a movie. It knows what the fuck it's doing. But there's a shot of just their shoes, their slippers outside the door, the closed door. And that tells you all you need to know.
Yeah, we see like
everyone's partying.
Card party and then
they're playing mahjong and stuff. And then they're just in their room trying to go to sleep.
Yeah. But I like the way that it shows those young people. It gives us like this beat of like, okay, in 1953, there were young people, you know?
That was a ruckus in 1953. Them playing mahjong.
I love when we see the women who like work at the spa. Just all huddled together and they're talking. I think that's a great little moment. When they're talking about the newlyweds the next day and they're talking kind of
gossip.
It is gossip and it's very like risque for the rest of the movie. They're talking about like, oh yeah, they woke up. Do you think they're really married? I don't know. One of them woke up and was smoking in bed. Like it's this kind of risque stuff that we don't see the rest of the movie, but it reminds us that youth existed and was very different from these old people.
Yeah. And they have that great moment. They talk about how they're going to wake up early the next day and they're going to walk along the beach. And there's one of the best scenes of the movie with the two of them looking out on the sea and being like, let's go home.
Yeah.
So Shishiryu, who is the patriarch of the family, he's like the Ozu guy. Like this is Ozu's actor. This is Ozu's Bobby De Niro, right? And Wim Wenders actually made a documentary in the 80s called Tokyo Ga. Have you seen it? So Wim Wenders, like Paul Schrader, was obsessed with Ozu and went on a pilgrimage to Japan in search of like just the Ozu feeling. Like Ozu died a couple decades before, but he went to just kind of find Ozu because I think he fell in love with Japan through his movies. And there's an interview with Shishiryu in that documentary where Wim Wenders interviews him. And at this point...
He outlived Ozu?
Oh, yeah, by like 30 years.
Are you serious?
Well, Ozu died young. He was 60. And I think
I know, but he looks like he's about to drop any minute in this movie.
No, you know what? I think they aged him up a little for this movie. He was he was like 50 when he made this.
Okay.
Yeah, so he lived another like 40 years. He lived till he was like 88.
Okay.
But... there is a great documentary if anyone is interested in Tokyo Ga. I wholeheartedly recommend Tokyo Ga because even if you don't like love Ozu, it's just if you've ever made like a pilgrimage to a place because you love a movie or a filmmaker or an artist or a book that it sort of came from, you can totally relate to it. But there is this great interview with Shishiryu and Wim Wenders, and it's just this. You know, kind of like an Ozu character. He's a little closed off. He doesn't give a lot, but it's like, you know, it's pretty beautiful.
Cool.
Yeah,
I'll check it out.
Yeah, I think it's also on the Criterion Channel.
Of course.
Yeah, but it's great. I love it.
All right, what is your favorite sound? Let's go with that one first.
So there was a couple. I was between two.
It's hard.
Ultimately, listen. I feel like you're going to make fun of me for this movie because this is like playing into my stereotype.
Your stereotype? Film bro?
Listen, I was a film bro like 10 years ago. Okay. Now I'm just a person of the world.
You are a victim of film broism.
Like I'm a reformed film bro.
Okay.
So there's a scene, the mother has died and it's her funeral. And they're doing this chanting.
That's great.
It's the chanting, and then you hear it's a loud, cacophonous, like insect noise too, because they are in the country, and it just has this. I almost
Can we hear
crying.
It?
Yeah. So good.
It is so good. That's a great one.
Yeah, it's just so elemental.
It really is.
And the way that he leaves, you know, the son leaves the funeral.
And he's looking at the graves. And he's thinking about how his mom is just going to like getting smaller and smaller. That's what he says.
Yeah. It's really beautiful.
It is. It really is.
Yeah. How about you? What's your favorite sound?
My favorite sound is the music when grandma is playing with the smallest grandson because it sounds like it's kind of like a child song. It's not really the music we've been hearing. I don't even know if it's the same. I don't know if it's like a variation of the same song or a completely different song. But it sounds very jingly. It sounds very like childlike. I just thought it, and that like the music in that made me really emotional in that scene. It's really sweet. And the fact that she's kind of like, she's looking at him and she's saying, you know, like, I don't think I'll be around when you're a doctor.
I know. You know what? That was that was actually tied with my favorite sound. That exact line.
That line. It's
she
great.
says, by the time you become a doctor, I wonder if I'll still be here.
It's very, very touching.
Yeah. The music is really, it's funny because music is used so sparingly in the movie. When it comes in, it does pack a punch.
Mm-hmm. That's what I wanted to do with my movie too. And we can like cut this, but like I really didn't want music to be in it that much. Mm-hmm. But then like when you're making a really small budget movie and you have music, like you have a composer who's kind enough to like do whatever for you. And our composer was incredible. There were moments like when we were editing where it really did feel like kind of empty. And if I were brave enough, I would have just left it. But I feel like I'm just like learning and I'm still just like, I'm not confident enough with myself to just leave it without music, you know?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. I did the same thing. I slathered my movie with this guy's score. Yeah. So what was your favorite sight from the movie?
This was so hard. Like
it's very hard.
Like really. And I know we're going to say this about a lot of movies, but I genuinely think this time was the hardest. I feel like I say that for every movie. I will say Earrings of Madame De was also very hard because it was those like dolly shots and I love those.
Yeah.
But for this one, it was hard because it's like images. Like here's one image, and it's so hard. Runner up for me, every time we saw the shirts on that like hanging mechanism blowing in the wind, runner up. But the other one is the shot of the mother, Tomi, has just died, and it is the father and the eldest daughter, Shige, and it's just a shot. It's like a tour of them. And again, it's the same shot we've seen like a bunch of times. I think they're sitting down. Actually, they might not be sitting down. But it's just that, like, it's just face on them. She starts crying, and she has not shown emotion. I mean, she doesn't act like a Bresson model in this, really, the actress playing her, but it's the most emotion that we've seen in the movie at that point.
Oh, yeah.
She starts crying, and he's just so confused. He's just like, oh, so the other brother is going to miss her because he didn't get here on time? Like, he's confused. I know. I went for like the most dramatic shot. No,
but you know, yeah, I get it. Mine is a little subtler, but it kind of conveys the same thing. It's when Noriko gets the call at work that Tomi is dying. She goes to the window. I think, she gets the call. She walks across the office. She goes to the window. And then we're outside. We hear construction noises, and then we're outside and we're watching the construction of this building being built. And it's so representative of that moment and the sort of the two worlds, the world of the city and Tokyo, and the world of the parents in the country, and the world's going on. There's that, and there's just the old and the new, the country and the city. It's just, themes that the movie's been playing with the whole time. It's not even that it's like the most striking shot because there's so many striking shots. There's a shot with it's looking out on the lake, and there's like two lanterns hanging like at the top of the frame. That's so beautiful. There's just so many beautiful shots.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
So it's not even like this is like the best single image. It's just that it conveys the whole thing. And you're with Noriko looking out the window, and she's kind of staring off. And like you said, it's one of the only times like she's not smiling.
What did Pauline say?
Pauline.
Pauline.
For those normal listeners, we usually do a segment called Pauline Says, where we pull a Pauline Kael review of the movie and discuss whether she had merit or not. We do love Pauline. In this case, she did not review the movie. I think this was a little before. She wasn't with the New Yorker for another 10, 15 years. And because this didn't get released in the I'm sure she saw it. She was not a fan of Ozu, though. I couldn't find a quote anywhere. But I know she thought his movies were too slow.
I could see that from her. I feel like she's very... Really?
I think it's unacceptable. I don't know. It seems weird to me that she wouldn't like Tokyo Story or Ozu. It just kind of blows my mind because it wears its heart on its sleeve. You know what it's doing. It's a simple story told really well.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. Like just
it's
the
classy.
Images.
Yeah. I don't know. Pauline. Why? We're now at the letterboxd portion of our episode where we read enlightening letterboxd reviews by anonymous users.
Yes.
Starting with a half-star review that just says Tokyo no story.
Oh my gosh. He's got a point. I'm kidding. This one was interesting. 2 stars. Getting my official cinephile membership, trademark, revoked as I am typing this. I am now an avid stamp collector instead. See, I don't get this review because they didn't type anything. That's it. I don't get it.
There's a 1 star that says, I admire people's ability to extract meaning from these films. I just see a bunch of old people talking.
Oh, no. Oh, my God.
Oh, this is my favorite. You ready?
Yeah.
1 star.
Oh, my God.
Okay. I love Japan shit. Maybe I'm a bit of a weeb. I loved Haozu. I loved Sing a Song of Sex. I like Japanese cinema, but this is mind-numbingly boring. Fuck the people who made this movie.
What? Oh my God.
Here's a 1 star. It says, this film is a true testament to the power of cinema to be extremely lame and boring. All of these just have to do with it being boring and long. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, pretty much. 1.5 stars. It takes an agonizingly long 135 minutes to make a very simple point about failing to recognize the importance of our loved ones above the daily grind of life. Like, in a bad way.
Here's the thing. Is that such a simple point? And also, what's wrong with taking a movie to impart that knowledge?
A movie about an everyday problem such as this, that every single person in the world goes through.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Furthermore, to my eye, the film is not shot. Regular tatami mat level shots are fine, but nothing more. Nor acted in any particularly special way. Not shot in any particularly special way.
See,
are you kidding me?
That is absolutely infuriating. And also to say that the performances are not special. What are they looking for? Like the Joker? That's a film bro. That's someone who needs this big, showy, stupid performance.
Perhaps they were searching for... Yes. I was going to say something with Jared Leto.
Oh, can we just say, not that we talk a lot of trash on this podcast, but Jared Leto, we don't like you.
I don't like him. I really don't. This one gave 5 stars. But the review says, probably shouldn't have watched this with my dad. I hope nothing ever happens to him. Heart.
Don't we all?
I do. I feel bad laughing. But
I hope his dad's okay.
Yeah, I do. 3 stars. Guessing one of Ozu's children forgot to send him a birthday card or something. It was just too slow for me. And well, maybe I'm just dead inside, but this didn't really do much for me.
Joke's on them. Ozu had no kids.
This is the first time it took me 3 sittings to finish a film, but I still believe it's okay because there's nothing really to dislike. I just didn't get much out of it, unfortunately.
Let me ask you this, Jackie.
So, yeah.
When you watch a movie, did you watch this all in one sitting, or do you stop and break it up? What's your viewpoint on that whole thing? I increasingly, I know more and more people who are like, yeah, I watched this 2-hour movie last night, but I watched the first 20 minutes and I'm going to watch some more tonight.
No, I don't like doing that. If I can help it, I never do that. But sometimes I can't help it. Sometimes I do get really tired, or sometimes I have to go somewhere.
Yeah.
So I really, really don't like doing it.
Same. Yeah, I think it's important because I think the flow of a movie, when you're in it moment to moment, for example, Tokyo Story, if you broke this up into a few different nights, I think it would lose almost all of its power.
Yes, I think so too.
Yeah.
Definitely. Wait, there's one more review I want to read just because it's ridiculous. This person gave like no stars.
Okay.
But I don't even think you can do that, right?
No, you can. You cannot. Well, no, you cannot rate it. Yeah.
Okay, so they didn't rate it.
They just didn't rate it.
And the comment is just, I watched it.
Cool.
I just thought that was funny.
Cool
thought
story.
that was funny. Cool story, bruh. You would know as a film.
Oh, is this past going to haunt me forever?
Yes.
Next week, we are doing Fassbinder's most well-known movie, Ali, Fear Eats the Soul, or just Fear Eats the Soul as it's listed on the BFI list, the Sight and Sound list.
And this is still number 93, by the way.
Yeah, it's technically the third from the bottom. Also, Tokyo Story, while number 3 on the critics list, which is what we're going off of, is number 1 on the director's list.
Are you serious? Mm-hmm. That's very surprising to me.
Yeah, well, because, Schrader and all those guys, vendors, he's their god.
He is their god.
Have you seen Buffalo 66, the Vincent Gallo movie with Christina Ricci? Mm. There's someone has a license plate. It just says Ozu. It's just like the love for Ozu is just like far and wide.
In that video I watched of Schrader talking, he used Ida as an example a lot, which was interesting. Yeah. I love Ida.
Oh, yeah, it's so good.
I really, really love Ida.
So, yeah, we're doing Fear Eats the Soul next week. It's Fassbinder. Come on. What's not to love? You got to come back. What are you going to do?
What are you going to do?
Fassbinder, the crazy Fassbinder. Have you seen any Fassbinder before? Mm-mm. We're doing it.
We're doing it.
We're doing it.
Let's do it.
Yeah. But yeah, that's going to wrap up this week. Thanks for joining us for Ozu's Tokyo Story. We enjoyed having you guys, and we enjoyed talking about it.
We did.
Jackie.
Signing off.
See you next time.
See ya.